Step into Sci-Fi codes where mystery meets imagination. Enjoy the journey, and don't forget to subscribe. Chapter 1: The Visitor in the Cold. The howling wind rattled the shutters of my remote Alaskan cabin as I pulled my thick parka tighter around me. Winters here were brutal, but I had long grown accustomed to their bite. What I was not accustomed to, however, was the sight before me: a tall, slender woman with a faint bluish hue to her skin, standing in the dim glow of my lantern. "If you protect me from the cold, I will reward you, human," she said, her voice as soft as the first snowfall of winter, yet carrying the weight of an unbreakable promise. I hesitated. This could be a trick, an illusion brought on by exhaustion. But her luminous eyes pleaded with an intensity that cut through my doubts. Whoever or whatever she was, she needed help. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. She glided across the creaky wooden floor with an effortless grace and settled near the fireplace, her shimmering skin absorbing the warmth. When she spoke again, it was not with words, but with a series of melodic tones. Somehow, I understood. Her name was something like Kisa. She came from a distant star system, but her ship had malfunctioned and crash-landed miles away. The cold was unlike anything she had ever encountered, and her physiology was ill-equipped to endure it. "What kind of reward are we talking about?" I asked, half-joking, trying to mask my nervousness. Kisa tilted her head, her translucent hair catching the firelight. "Knowledge. A gift from my people. Something that will change your life." I nodded slowly, unsure if I should be excited or terrified. As the fire crackled between us, I couldn't help but study her features. Her delicate, almost crystalline skin reflected the light like polished glass, and her fingers, long and slender, hovered near the flames as though drawing strength from their warmth. The way she observed her surroundings fascinated me. She was both analytical and cautious, absorbing every detail of my small home with an intense focus. "How did you find my cabin?" I finally asked, breaking the silence. She blinked slowly, her eyes shifting through shades of silver and violet. "Your energy. It was a beacon in the dark. A warm pulse in the cold void." That response didn't make much sense, but I let it go. Maybe her senses were attuned to things I couldn't even begin to comprehend. Maybe, to her, my humble existence in this frozen wasteland was like a lighthouse guiding lost ships through a storm. Kisa shivered, despite the heat of the fire. The realization hit me hard: she was truly struggling. Even with warmth, she was barely holding on. Her body trembled slightly, and I could see faint lines of frost forming along her exposed skin. Whatever she wasn't built for this kind of cold. I stood and grabbed a thick wool blanket, draping it over her shoulders. She flinched at first, her luminous eyes narrowing in surprise. Then, after a pause, she pulled it tighter around herself, her expression softening. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're going to need more than just a blanket to survive out here," I said, moving toward the small kitchen area. "I have some hot soup. It's not much, but it should help." She nodded, her gaze following me with a mix of curiosity and silent gratitude. As I ladled the steaming broth into a bowl, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life had just changed forever. Chapter 2: A Fragile Bond. The following days were a careful dance of adaptation and discovery. Kisa was unlike anything I had ever encountered, and though her presence was undeniably alien, there was something strikingly human about the way she reacted to kindness. She was wary at first, hesitant to accept my help beyond the bare essentials. But as the nights passed and the blizzards howled outside, our bond deepened in unspoken ways. Communication was a challenge. Her language was musical, a series of resonating tones that ebbed and flowed like a song. Sometimes, she spoke through images, glowing, vivid projections that danced in the air between us. They weren't just pictures, they carried emotions, memories, entire experiences compressed into fleeting glimpses. One night, as the storm raged against the cabin, she showed me her homeworld. I gasped as the walls of my cabin seemed to dissolve, replaced by an endless twilight landscape. Towering crystalline trees stretched toward a sky filled with swirling nebulae, and vast oceans shimmered like liquid gemstones beneath the soft glow of two distant moons. The air was thick with a palpable energy, a hum that resonated deep in my chest. "Your world is beautiful," I whispered, lost in awe. Kisa smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. It was. The projection shifted. The trees withered, their luminous branches fading to dull, lifeless husks. The oceans darkened, their vibrant glow extinguished. An eerie silence replaced the hum of life. What happened? I asked, dreading the answer. She closed her eyes. We consumed too much. Took without balance. Our world is dying. The weight of her sorrow settled heavily between us. I had no words of comfort, no solution to offer. All I could do was sit beside her, letting the fire cast flickering shadows against the walls as the wind howled outside. It was in that silence that I realized something profound. Kisa wasn't just a visitor seeking shelter, she was a survivor. A wanderer from a dying world, searching for hope in the cold void of space. And somehow, against all odds, she had found me. Chapter 3: The Desperate Journey. The morning sun barely pierced through the dense, gray clouds, casting a dim, eerie light over the snow-laden landscape. I had grown accustomed to the biting cold, but Kisa had not. Her normally radiant skin had dulled to a muted blue, and her movements were slow, strained. Every breath she took was shallow, labored. The cold. It is consuming me, she murmured, her voice barely audible over the wind that whistled through the cracks in the cabin. A jolt of fear ran through me. Despite the warmth of the fire, the layers of blankets, and every effort I had made to keep her insulated, she was still fading. She needed something more, something I couldn't provide within the confines of this wooden cabin. Your ship, I said suddenly, the thought hitting me like a bolt of lightning. Is there anything there that can help you? Kisa's eyes flickered with weak recognition. Perhaps, but it is far. The journey will be difficult. I glanced outside. The storm had finally eased, but the world beyond our shelter was still an expanse of unyielding ice and snow. It would be treacherous, but I couldn't let her fade away in front of me. I had to try. Then we go now, I said firmly, already pulling on my thickest coating gloves. Lean on me if you have to. We'll make it. She hesitated, but eventually nodded. Wrapping herself in the blankets, she struggled to her feet. I caught her before she could collapse, draping her arm over my shoulder. She was lighter than I expected, her frame delicate despite her height. Step by step, we pushed into the wilderness, leaving the safety of the cabin behind. The journey was brutal. The wind cut like knives, and the snow swallowed our steps, making every movement a battle. Kisa's body trembled against mine, her strength fading with each passing moment. I tightened my grip around her waist, forcing us forward, refusing to let her collapse. Just a little further, I urged, though I wasn't sure if that was true. The forest thinned, revealing a stretch of barren land where something metallic glinted beneath layers of frost. My heart pounded. Her ship. With renewed energy, I hurried forward, half carrying Kisa. The vessel was sleek, its silver surface marred by impact damage. I had no idea how to open it, but Kisa weakly raised a trembling hand, pressing it to a hidden panel. A soft chime sounded, and a section of the hull hissed open. Warmth poured out. A heat unlike anything in the frozen wasteland. I all but dragged her inside, sealing the entrance behind us. The interior was small, but filled with alien technology. Kisa reached toward a compartment, fingers shaking as she retrieved a vial of glowing liquid. Without hesitation, she pressed it to her skin. The reaction was immediate, her color brightened, her breathing steadied, and a soft sigh of relief escaped her lips. You saved me, she whispered, her voice stronger now. Before I could respond, the ground rumbled beneath us. Chapter 4: The Hunters. The sky darkened, an ominous shadow spreading across the landscape outside. A deep, mechanical hum vibrated through the air. I turned to Kisa, whose expression had gone rigid with fear. They found me, she breathed. Who? My stomach twisted with unease. She didn't need to answer. A massive, looming structure descended from the clouds, its jagged silhouette cutting against the gray sky. It wasn't sleek like her ship, it was angular, predatory. As it drew closer, I could see figures within, their forms encased in heavy armor, their weapons glowing with unreadable energy. Hunters, Kisa said. They track my people across the stars. They take what they can and destroy the rest. A cold dread settled over me. We can't fight them, can we? Not directly, she admitted. But we can run. I swallowed hard. I had no idea what I was getting into, but I wasn't about to abandon her now. Then let's go. Kisa moved swiftly despite her recent weakness, activating the controls of her ship. The vessel hummed to life, its interior lights flickering in response. But outside, the hunters were closing in. A sharp, metallic sound echoed through the air as they landed, their weapons raised. The first shot was fired. It struck the ground just outside the ship, sending a spray of ice and dirt flying. I grabbed the nearest solid object, a heavy metal tool, and braced myself. Useless, probably, but it was better than nothing. I need time to power the ship, Kisa said urgently. Keep them back. I had no idea how I was supposed to do that, but I stepped forward anyway, positioning myself between her and the encroaching figures. Come on, you bastards, I muttered, gripping my makeshift weapon. Let's see what you've got. Chapter 5, The Final Stand. The hunters moved like phantoms, their heavy armor making no sound as they advanced. Their glowing weapons hummed with barely contained energy, crackling in the frozen air. I clenched the tool in my hands, my pulse a relentless drumbeat against my ribs. There was no way I could take them on, but I had to buy Kisa time. One of them raised his weapon, aiming directly at me. Before he could fire, I hurled the tool with everything I had. It struck his helmet, not enough to do real damage, but enough to make him hesitate. That was all I needed. Kisa's ship roared to life, the thrusters igniting in a brilliant burst of blue fire. The force knocked back the nearest hunters, sending them sprawling into the snow. Kisa called out, her voice sharp with urgency. Inside. Now. I turned and sprinted toward the ship, the heat of another energy blast searing past my shoulder. I dove through the open hatch just as Kisa hit the controls, sealing the door behind me. The ship shuddered as more shots slammed against its hull. Alarms blared, and Kisa's fingers danced over the console. The hunters weren't letting us go without a fight. Hold on, she shouted. The engines flared, sending the ship rocketing upward. I was thrown against the seat, the force pressing down on me as we broke through the clouds. Below, the hunters scrambled to retaliate, but Kisa's ship was faster than anything they had. The sky turned from gray to black as we tore into space. But we weren't safe yet. Kisa's hands tightened around the controls, her eyes flicking to the monitors. A massive hunter vessel loomed ahead, its dark, angular shape eclipsing the stars. They won't stop, she murmured. They never stop. I swallowed, trying to steady my breath. Then what do we do? Kisa hesitated. For the first time since I met her, I saw uncertainty in her gaze. Then, determination hardened her expression. We fight. She pressed a sequence of buttons, and the ship's hidden weapons emerged from its sleek hull. A pulse cannon powered up, glowing with an intense blue light. The hunter vessel charged its own weapons, preparing for a final, decisive blow. The universe held its breath. And then, the battle began. Chapter 6, The Battle. The first shots lit up the void, streaks of blue and red colliding in violent bursts of energy. Kisa maneuvered the ship with breathtaking speed, dodging incoming fire with sharp, calculated turns. The hunter vessel loomed large, its turrets rotating to track our every move. Targeting their engines. Kisa shouted over the chaos. She flipped a switch, and the pulse cannon fired, a concentrated beam slicing through the darkness. The hunter vessel shuddered, one of its thrusters erupting in a shower of sparks. But they weren't done. More ships emerged from the shadows, smaller attack crafts flanking their mothership. They closed in fast, their weapons locking onto us. A warning alarm blared, and I gripped the seat as our ship jolted from an impact. We can't take them all. I yelled. Kisa's jaw tightened. We don't have to. We just need an opening. She veered toward a nearby asteroid field, the massive floating rocks providing temporary cover. The hunter ships followed, their shots carving fiery trails through the debris. Kisa twisted the controls, weaving between the asteroids with impossible precision. "Hang on," she called, pressing a button. The ship released a cluster of energy mines, tiny spheres that detonated on impact. Explosions rippled through the field, taking out two of the pursuing ships. But the mothership remained, its cannons glowing ominously. Kisa glanced at me, a question in her eyes. I nodded. "Do it." She angled the ship upward, hurtling toward the massive vessel. The hunters must have thought we were making a suicidal charge because they hesitated just for a second. That was all Kisa needed. She pulled the trigger, unleashing the full force of the pulse cannon at the mothership's bridge. The energy beam tore through its shields, striking its core. A blinding explosion erupted, consuming the ship in a fiery inferno. The remaining hunters scattered, their formations breaking apart. Kisa let out a breath, watching as the surviving ships retreated into the void. Silence filled the cockpit. Then, she turned to me, a weary but triumphant smile on her lips. "We did it." For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I allowed myself to believe it. We had won. Ready for more? Like, subscribe, and let's keep exploring the unknown together.